Welcome to this week's episode of Time Sync, the podcast to let you know what's worth sinking your time into. We've got a great episode for you this week. And as always, I'm joined by Mr. Hummer.
Yosa!
And your favorite shallow monster, Tito.
And I thought I smelled bad on the outside. It was it was that or rebellions are built on hope.
Boo.
Those are my two favorite.
You should have gone with the first one. We got a very special episode for you this week. We're going to talk about one of the most popular franchises in all of human history of all time. We're of course. What?
You talking about Babe?
Yes, Babe the Pig. The second one though.
We're talking about the Bible.
We're talking about Babe. Talking about the Bible. We're talking about Star Trek. Just kidding. Star Trek sucks. We're going to be talking about Star Wars.
Hey, watch
Hey,
it.
there it is.
What do you mean? What do you mean Star Trek's the worst?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, no. What we're talking about is for sure far more superior. We're talking about Star Wars in honor of May the 4th. We're recording this episode on Revenge of the 5th, and this episode entirely is going to be dedicated to Star Wars today. So we're going to dive right into it.
Revenge of the Fifth.
Yeah, you didn't know about Revenge of the 5th?
I never heard that before.
Just outing yourself immediately at the beginning of the podcast.
Also, happy Cinco de Mayo for my Mexican brothers and sisters out there.
Gracias.
All right. So, most recent episode of Star Wars, the completion of the arc, the final last episode of the Skywalker saga, Rise of Skywalker. We're going to go around and let you know if it's worth your time. We're going to tell you what you think. Some of us, were deeply emotionally impacted by this movie. I'll let them share why. But let's see, Hummer, Rise of Skywalker. What have you got to say?
It's an absolute just train wreck. It's a disaster.
Coming in hot.
What makes you say that?
I mean, should you see it? Yes, because it's obligatory. It's a Star Wars movie. You're invested in the characters. But there's just like so many, like what I would just consider plot holes in just like J.J. Abrams just ruined Star Wars. He ruined it. You know, I don't understand where all of a sudden you've been alluding to the First Order, and all of a sudden, you know, First Order, Snoke. Now Snoke's completely useless. He's worthless. It was Palpatine the whole time. Sorry, we're for spoiler alerts here.
Yeah, spoiler alert. We're definitely gonna drop spoilers in this one.
Yeah, and to say that Palpatine's had this gigantic fleet that he's been hiding, how do you source parts like that to hide the world's or the galaxy's largest fleet? Like, how do you do that? I don't get it.
No, there are so many things that make so little sense in this movie. Yeah, I don't want to cut across you here because I'm going to talk for like 5 to 10 minutes when I jump in.
Go for it. No, go.
Well, you don't have any pros, Hummer?
I mean, a pro would be that, you know, Miss Daisy, she's cute. You know, she's not bad to look at. I mean,
Shallow.
No, I mean, I just think the whole series, like the whole trilogy, did such a bad job at developing the arcs of all the characters. Like, it almost made characters not like, why even have them? Why was Finn even in the episode? Like in any of these movies, there was 0 point to have him in there. Like, you had this whole, and this is going to go back to the previous movie. So if we're going to skipping ahead the retro, where he has the big buildup at the Battle of Captain Phasma. Mm-hmm. Where was the battle with Captain Phasma? Like,
she fell in a hole.
He fell in a hole.
Sometimes people fall in holes. I've done it myself. You know, it's unpleasant.
Boba Fett fell in a hole.
Boba Fett had there wasn't really a character arc for him per se, but there was this kind of like sense of he was the anti Han Solo. Like, he was the person that Han Solo constantly ran into battling Han Solo, where Phasma really wasn't that for Finn. It was just like someone like, why is he so afraid of her? Why is she there? But he had so much room for growth, and they just cut his character, and they did him such a disservice, I feel like. And I mean,
Wait, but that's Force Awakens though.
I'm going. I mean, I was kind of taking it all the way from the front to the beginning, because you can't look at one movie, I think, and just not look at the other ones. Where Force Awakens is essentially, in my eyes, a remake of A New Hope, which would be fine. Like, I actually was okay with that. I thought they did a good job of introducing the characters. I was excited for movie number 2 to see where they were going to take them. Hopefully, it wasn't going to be a remake of Empire, which is not going to go there yet.
Although in retrospect, that might have been the better choice. Yeah. I liked Force Awakens.
I liked Force Awakens, and I think this from there, it's like The Last Jedi was just so discombobulated in how the plot lines went, whereas I felt like I was watching a soap opera. You know, every other scene was a different group of cast members, characters doing completely idiotic and non-consequential task and quest. And then the last one, I felt like I was watching a really bad cutscene from video games.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Before you just eviscerate this movie, Tito, let me play devil's advocate and throw some pros out there, because it's still visually fantastic, right? I say that's my only adjective I know, apparently, but it looks great. They did a really good job with the scenes and the visual effects. The actors are good. All the characters, I care about them, right? So Rey is a great character. Poe Dameron is awesome. Oscar Wilde is great at Poe. John Boyega.
Oscar Isaac.
Oscar Isaac is great. John Boyega, very likable as Finn. These are all characters like I want to see how their journey completes, and you actually care about them. It's just the part, and apparently it's the most important part, is the story and the script, because really everything else was good. It looked great. The actors did a good job. They did a great job bringing Leia back from the dead and putting her into the movie, trying to, use what they could. But the script was terrible. I wonder what the original script was when she was still alive. Or is that why it's so bad? Or is it just because they had 3 separate directors with 3 different visions trying to do 3 different things? The original director for the movie got fired, and they brought in J.J. Abrams to try to save it, but he didn't.
Yeah.
The biggest problem is they didn't have a cohesive, like Kevin Feige at Marvel, where he's overseeing all the Marvel movies, making sure everything flows together and has a start and a finish to make sense. It's just the story is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean I agree with both of you guys. I think we're all on the same page here. So from what Hummer said right at the beginning, like, you can't grade this movie as to how much we think someone should watch it. It's the 9th movie in a 40-year trilogy of trilogies. Like, if you've watched any of them, you have to watch this. Like, you have to watch it. It's part of the zeitgeist. It's like, we grew up on these movies. Our parents grew up like teenagers. Like, my dad was a kid wasn't a kid. He was like in college, I think, when these movies were coming out.
He was never a kid.
my dad was born kicking asses. So like, he was young when these movies came out. Like, you have to watch it. And Sauce, what you were talking about, like, there were good parts to this movie. Like, I love the cast, and I really loved. I remember, did we see the first episode 7 together, Sauce?
I think so.
Remember. Yeah. But like, you came out of that, like, it was a very clear, like, parallel remake of A New Hope. But like, I came out and I was like, that's fine. Like, give the people what they want, pay them their fan service, and then have it tell its own story. Daisy Ridley is great. Oscar Isaac is great. John Boyega is great. When they came out of that first movie, I was so excited to see where those characters went.
Oh, you know what? Nobody's mentioned that Kylo Ren has been great, because Kylo Ren is the most botched, horrible character arc next to maybe Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones. But Adam Driver's an amazing actor, so that's what really sucks.
It's because, like, you see Adam Driver in other stuff. Logan Lucky is good. I haven't seen Marriage Story, but like, he's a good actor for his he's one of those guys who's like, I've heard this talked about on other podcasts. This is not my Joker line, but like he's one of those guys who are like, is he good looking? He's very interesting to look at. Like you really got to stare at that face. But like, is he good looking?
I like the cats that look like him.
He gets steadily beefier as the trilogy goes on, but also like not in a bad way. Is it good? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, Adam Driver, like his Kylo Ren story arc. I guess he did what he could with it, but it was strange. But like in the Rise of Skywalker specifically, like I went in, I didn't look at any of the reviews, and I was like, I personally did not like Episode 8. I could talk about that for 10 minutes as well. But the cast is good in Rise of Skywalker. Like there's chemistry between the three main members, and like the jokes, a lot of the jokes work. Like when Kylo Ren puts his mask back together and he walks into the room with all of the generals, and they're like, "Oh, you put your mask on again. That's great. No, nothing scary about that." Like that's funny. I didn't mind the part where they're like, "Oh, like they fly now, whatever." Like that's silly. That's part of normal like silly movie making. Also like later in that scene, they're flying around on their speeders, and Poe Dameron's like, "Oh, I think I lost him," and C-3PO says, "Oh, good work, sir." And then like the stormtrooper comes around and he's like, "Terrible work, sir."
C-3PO kills it in the movie. That's actually the best use of him. He's hilarious in that movie. Rise of
like
Skywalker.
it's like the individual components are good, and there's also like tons of small things that are wrong with the movie, like that don't really bother me. Like I can forgive all the small stuff. Like it's not they fly now. It's not the random new force powers that feel unearned, like the new force healing power, the new teleport things through space Jedi between two Jedi's power, light speed skipping. Like one of the most famous lines is light speed travel isn't like Dustin Crop's kid. The Knights of Ren not doing anything other than like being like Alien Coachella, Lando's terrible entrance, all of the MacGuffins, C-3PO's inability to read Sith for some reason. Like I honestly can forgive all of, like, cut me off when I get to 10 minutes.
I cannot forgive the I can't read Sith. I can't forgive that.
If these were individual little mistakes, but the whole story was good, I'd be like, all right, C-3PO can't read Sith, but like it furthered the plot, and the problem with it is the big picture, which is what you were talking about when you were talking Sauce, and you, Hummer. Like they messed up the big picture so badly, and Disney owns Marvel, Disney owns Star Wars, so like they started this trilogy out with essentially an unlimited budget. They had an unlimited budget. They could get any actor they wanted to be in this movie. They could get any director they wanted to direct these trilogies. They could get any writer. They could make the visual effects as great and as stunning as they wanted to. The choreographer for the fight scenes. Anybody they wanted. And just the fact that they botched this so hard, like the last movie is incomprehensible, and it does not link the three movies together at all. The first trilogy, episode 4 through 6, it's like, okay, like the universe is corrupt, but there are good people. You rise above your circumstances, and even when you have a bad background, like if you stay true to yourself and you believe in your friends, blah blah blah, like it's a classic little guy hero's journey overcoming evil. Like very good, like very obvious story arc. And the episodes 1 through 3, it's like the corruption of Anakin Skywalker, very clear. What is this trilogy about? Like, what is this trilogy about? And then, like, if it's the capping off the trilogy of trilogies, I'll try to wrap this up soon. If it's capping off the trilogy of trilogies, then what is the whole series about? Like, I liked the only thing I kind of liked. Well, I liked a couple things about Episode 8, but one of the things I liked was like Rey has no background, so like it doesn't matter where you come from. Like you can, if you have talent and you have drive, like you can become whatever, the best person in the galaxy. Like that's like regardless of the rest of the movie, that's a good theme. And then they just like completely throw it away. And so is the moral of the whole like 9 movies that like you have to have come from the right background to be successful. Like,
Well, that's a deep statement.
Yeah, like I don't know. All right, let me.
It's
let me
called
wrap this
it's
up.
called light privilege.
Yeah, so like I don't know, the movies for people who like myself and you guys who've obviously invested a lot in these movies, it's so disappointing to see them end this way. As I was like angrily rewatching it with my son yesterday, he was watching it and he like giggled and I called him a milky idiot. And then my wife got mad at me and took away my TV privileges. I had to finish watching it on the toilet, pretending I was going to the bathroom for 2 hours to get ready for this podcast. Like it got it got complicated. So I don't know. Where does that leave us?
Yeah, that's a good point though. Like, what is it about? Because it's the Skywalker saga, but really the last 3 movies are like barely. It has not like.
I would make the argument the movie is actually more about Kylo Ren. It's really the story. It's really the story of Kylo Ren, not really the story of Rey. Like Rey, you kind of have this like almost like this rising trajectory that you know she's going to be someone. You don't know who. Yeah, the idea is yes, she doesn't know her background. She comes from nothing, but you have this lingering sense the whole movie that she is someone. We're all speculating who it is. We all are trying to speculate: is it a Skywalker or what, or who she may be? And it turns out, oh, okay, she's a Palpatine. Great. But with with Kylo Ren, you watch his, and like you mentioned, they did botch, I think, his character. So because you did make some great points, the acting is really, really good. The cast is awesome. Like I got really excited after Force Awakens of where this could go. And Kylo Ren's character arc was just so like, all right. So at the end of episode 1, oh, he's going to turn back to the light. Oh no, he's back to being evil. Oh no, he's going to go back to the light again. Oh
Yeah.
no. And like it's like he keeps flip-flopping and they keep wishy-washing and back and forth until the end. And it's just so disappointing.
Yeah.
You're talking about Ben Swolo?
I mean, if you're thinking about these 3 movies in the context of the larger overall picture, I remember watching the second trilogy or the prequels and hearing a lot of people talking about, not favorably about those movies. And the one thing I got to say about those is George Lucas really thought out those movies really well about each character's character arc, to the point to where even the character I think that gets the most hatred of all the characters, Jar Jar Binks, is not the worst character in the Star Wars franchise.
I know.
That's so messed up to say.
Yeah.
Like, at least he was well thought out, or at least he was thought out of some sort of character arc and phased him out. He was not any of this series, central focus. When he comes back into play, he's some sort of, senator or whatever, but he's still a goofball.
And
that's
fits
actually
for his character.
Yeah, and that's clutch for the Emperor's plan because he takes advantage of them.
Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, I got to give Lucas credit, and I think maybe that's what these movies were missing, was maybe a little touch of the Lucas magic.
Listen, if I could go back in time and tell my younger self, not that much younger self, if he should watch these next 3 episode 7, 8, and 9, I would tell him no. 1 out of 5. Don't waste your time, and then I would be happier because I would have never known how terrible they were and ruined the franchise pretty much because they're pointless. They had nothing to it. They had nothing to the overall story. Even episode 1 through 3, you got to see the Emperor's plot to how he became the Emperor and manipulate the entire galaxy into war, and then put himself in a position of power and becoming the Emperor. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon is awesome. Darth Maul was sweet.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Sith is that last battle, the Yoda versus the Emperor at the same time, Obi-Wan versus Anakin. That's what you always wanted in Star Wars movies. You wanted awesome lightsaber fights. You wanted these space wizards fighting and the culmination of a battle that meant something. And then what we got in Rise of the Skywalker was a bunch of lightning, and then they kissed for some reason. That's what we got.
Yeah, after that first movie, after episode 7, I was like, okay, like it makes sense. I kind of like it. They're not trained in the Force, so they're not like doing backflips. They're just hacking away at each other with lightsabers. But after like watching The Rise of Skywalker, and when I thought to myself, like, did I really want to see Kylo Ren and Rey and the Emperor like doing backflips and pulling out lightsabers and stuff? And like, yeah, I fucking did want to see that. That shit is awesome. Like I don't watch Star Wars for the realism of people not knowing how to use a lightsaber. I watch it to see space wizards doing backflips with their light swords. So I think like the best the best thing that this trilogy did, I don't know if it's good or bad, honestly, is it made the first trilogy look good. You look at episodes 1 through 3 and you're like, like this is actually not bad. All the stuff in the third movie, just the introduction of Palpatine, everything is like so unearned. Like they're just like, oh, here's Palpatine now, and also Rey and Kylo Ren are kissing, and blah blah.
We're not brother and sister. We can kiss.
Yeah. I don't know. Like,
I would say the greatest side effect of the new movies, honestly, is the renewed interest in the video games.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. We're definitely gonna get to that.
I could punch The Rise of Skywalker in the face for a lot longer, but no, I hear you, Hummer. The great thing about Disney taking over. Oh wait, one last point. I think this wouldn't have been so painful if it weren't for 2 other movie franchises that I always think about with this. So I'll save the obvious one for second, but the one that I always think about is, have you guys seen the new Planet of the Apes trilogy?
Yes.
Like every one of those movies is amazing. Like they're so good. And the premise of Planet of the Apes is so limited and ridiculous. Monkeys take over the world. And
Apes
like if you can
strong together.
If you can take that premise and turn it into an amazing trilogy with emotional payoffs in every single one, and you don't realize how ridiculous it is until you're thinking about your Star Wars podcast, like you should be able to write, like, why do I ever see a bad movie if you can make Planet of the Apes good? And then the other thing is, like, Avengers, Marvel, 20-some movies, huge stakes on the line to wrap up their first decade-long, like multiple movies per year storyline.
24 movies
with tons of superhero characters, each with their own individual like needs, moments, backstories, and they nailed it. Like, everybody loves Endgame, everybody loves Infinity War. Like, they nailed it so hard, and so the expectations were so high for episode 9. Like, all right, like, they'll figure it out, they'll pull it back together. But like with unlimited resources, they botched it so hard. And like that's why the 3 of us are here nerding out on how disappointed we are, because like the argument that we would have been disappointed in anything just doesn't hold water when there are these other examples of things that like are, you know, like it's not easy, but with unlimited resources, like
which they
should have done better.
Like Endgame literally made my wife cry when Tony Stark
am I your wife?
Yeah, but
if you haven't,
my wife also cried.
Me too. But no, I mean, like, that's the crazy if you think about it. It's a superhero movie. It's an action movie. They're kind of comedies, and yet Disney was able to culminate to the end where you just bawled like a little girl or a little boy or whatever, a little person just crying at the end of a superhero movie. Like, that's insane, right?
Yeah. So let me tie it together what you're both are saying. It's because those movies focus on not the fact that they're superhero movies. They focus on being a good movie, being a good story, telling a good narrative. The Rise of Skywalker didn't focus on that at all. And what the Marvel movies have that Star Wars messed up on is they have, again, Kevin Feige overseeing everything. And for specifically Endgame, the Russos directed and the writers for Captain America 2 were the same as Captain America 3 Civil War, were the same as Infinity War, and were the same for Endgame. So they knew what they were doing and how to finish their stories because they've been writing them and directing them the whole time. Star Wars used different directors, different writers. They didn't figure it out. But what they're going to do is they're going to, now that they're done with the Skywalker saga, they're going to focus on this new age that we haven't seen before. So right now there's 3 ages in Star Wars. There's the Age of the Republic. There's the Age of the Rebellion. So Age of Republic's the prequels. Age of the Rebellion's the original trilogy. And the Age of the Resistance is we won't talk about it anymore ever again.
Horrible.
So now they're going to do the Age of the High Republic when, you know, everything was like the golden age of Jedis and everything was cool. And they're going to try to like
flips.
all kinds of backflips, all kinds of Sith to fight. They're going to focus on all the books, comic books, video games, and movies taking place in this realm. So I'm praying that they have someone to link all those things together and like everything's leading to something to have like a cohesive story woven throughout all their different mediums. That's my hope, that they do it right this time.
It seems like there's a lot they could easily learn from this mistake, and they have examples of the right way to do things.
They have that. They have the examples, and I mean, they literally have a video game that was a years long video game in Knights of the Old Republic that go off of in terms of storyline and where to take it from, and like you mentioned, the book. So hopefully they've learned from this, because Disney did invest a ton of money, not only in buying the rights from George Lucas, but building out an entire theme park around Star Wars. So, you know, it's just not going to stop now. Plus, I'm going to give them some credit and some props that they did create 2 of what my favorite Star Wars movies of all times, which is the Rogue One. And I love Solo. Amazing. And I love Solo too. I thought Solo was a good movie.
What?
Yeah, I like them both.
I thought Solo was like the Ant-Man of the Star. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Point. Yeah,
All right, it's fine.
I thought Solo was
Rogue
awful.
One was the best.
Solo is like would be a good Star Wars movie if Han Solo wasn't in it.
Yeah. That man, Alden Ehrenreich. Is that how you say it?
Exactly. You don't remember because he was bad.
But Emilia Clarke was so hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And Donald Glover as Lando was even hotter.
Yeah, Donald Glover.
I mean, I liked it because it was like a cheeky Star Wars movie.
I'm on board with you, Hummer.
It was cheeky. It was like action, but it still had a little bit of fun to it. But Rogue One was this amazing way to tie into God.
Man, Rogue One is great. I feel like Rogue One is underrated. I love Rogue One.
Well, you know, they messed up in Rogue One too because they fired the director halfway through to get Ron Howard in, and they just need to focus on something and commit to it and stick to it, you know, because you can tell the changes affected it.
I would have loved to see the. I liked Solo. Like the stakes are low. Yeah, like you said, Hummer, it was cheeky. They also fired the what are their names, Sauce? The guys who directed the Lego movie.
Oh yeah. I think I'll look it up. Yeah. I'll fact check you.
It's the guys who directed the Lego movie, 21 Jump Street. They're hilarious. They're goofy, but apparently they got fired because they were making the Solo movie too silly. But I would have loved to see their version of Solo.
More silly would have been welcomed. It didn't need to be a serious movie in any way, shape, or form because that's not Han Solo. Han Solo isn't this serious guy. I don't picture Han Solo as doing anything in his life just by the bucket, by the tea, or I just picture him being just out there and crazy.
Yeah.
It was Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Yeah. Those guys are great. All their stuff they direct is really solid. This will be my last point.
Okay.
Yeah, last point for me. So Rise of Skywalker, super disappointing. But what's inspiring is like you said, they have a lot of plans coming up, and basically everything they've done around the Rise of Skywalker, the other Star Wars properties they've had, have been great. So they released a new season of Clone Wars which is awesome. And Clone Wars, the cartoon in general, is like so good. If you haven't seen it, you like Star Wars, you're like, oh, maybe it's a cartoon. Like it's great. The first two
really
seasons or
good.
whatever, Disney bought it while it was being shot, and they had a huge influx of cash, and so the writing and the animation goes way up. It's awesome. The Mandalorian, amazing. There's like all of the extra stuff around the comic books that they've written under Marvel have been great. All the extra stuff around the Rise of Skywalker and this new trilogy, they've nailed every single one of them. And even though they God, I can't believe how badly they bungled this trilogy. But there's so much good stuff if you like Star Wars that you can see around it and stuff that gives you hope for the future.
One thing I would say about The Mandalorian, because it's really good, and I would definitely, at this point, after watching the entire series, I'd give it like a 5. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it.
Well, you never scored Rise of Skywalker. What's both of you, a 1 out of 5 on our scale. On 5 is if you should stop what you're doing and watch it, or 1 is don't waste your time. What are you going to give it?
If you've invested 40 years or 30 years or 20 years of your life being a Star Wars fan, 3. If you haven't watched Star Wars and you don't care about Star Wars, 0. Like, don't watch it.
Make it your first one to watch.
If you're a big Star Wars fan, you've seen the other 8 movies. Like, you've
seen it already. If you are,
yeah, like you've seen it. If you're like, should I get into Star Wars? This one is way down on your list. Watch I think we'll talk about this a little later, but watch the old movies. They're great. They're awesome. Especially episodes 4 through 6, the original trilogy. Watch those first. You'll love them. Put this like way, way back and just know that you'll be disappointed. I feel like
stop at 6. Stop at 6. Go watch Rogue One. Go watch Solo. Don't even watch. Maybe watch Force Awakens and then stop.
I'll drop a link in the show notes with my fanfic.
A lot of nudity.
Yeah. That was the other thing. Not way not enough nudity in this trilogy. If you've seen Star Wars, obviously you've already seen this movie. If you're a Star Wars fan, if you haven't seen it at all, you should get into it. Go through Star Wars, but put this way down. I think a 1 is like, don't ever see it. This is a 2 for me. If you want an actual grading of this,
yeah,
but it's different. It's hard to grade because of the legacy of Star Wars.
Yeah, I was gonna see it no matter what. That's why it's still a 2. But Mandalorian is Star Wars done right. So what were you saying, Hummer?
So I'll say I definitely say, if you haven't started watching it after seeing the whole thing, it's definitely a 5. Go watch it. It's you should put that next on your DVR. Go watch it. But keep in mind the way it kind of starts off is, I think, kind of slow at first, where it's kind of serial, but each episode has its almost, and this is where I'm going to get skewered, it's almost Star Trek-y in the sense that each episode has its underlying theme that it's trying to accomplish, and it's not necessarily this continuation of a story. It's like each episode is its own episode that you could theoretically watch out of order up until a certain point. And then it does start picking up on a certain storylines, but each episode still has its main overarching theme throughout it. And that's what I really liked about it, is that each show is different and it's not necessarily dictated on what happened in the prior episode.
Yeah, I love Mandalorian. It's really good. I would liken it more to if anyone's fans of Firefly.
Yes.
It's kind of it has a very much like space Western feel where so lone guy, he's like kind of going from episode to episode. He's experiencing something new every episode, but there's one kind of theme storyline that ties everything together. He's learning things, he's growing, and like the stakes are, in comparison to the rest of the Star Wars, like the Star Wars movies, the stakes are low. It's this one guy on his journey, but it really like fleshes the universe out. So like can't think of any off the top of my head, but there's probably 1 or 2 episodes that are stinkers. But overall, like it's very solid. And especially if you love Star Wars, like it's a 5. Go watch it. It's great. It really builds the universe out.
One of the reasons I think it's so good is because it's what you wanted to see after you saw the original trilogy. So like, I want to see stormtroopers. I want to see battles. I don't want to see First Order troopers or clone troopers. Like when I went to the Star Wars theme park in Disney World, and the whole time I was thinking, this is really cool and it's very immersive, but I wish it was original trilogy stormtroopers walking around, not First Order stuff, because they're trying to market what they're pushing right now, but the original trilogy is the best. So Mandalorian taking place during that time, or at least the end of it, but it's still in the same time frame, makes it better, because that's the good Star Wars. And you mentioned Clone Wars, Tito, which we're probably not going to go over that a whole lot, but if you want to know what happened in between episode 2 and episode 3, it's a good show, and it's really interesting. It has a lot of good stories, and it introduces Ahsoka, which they're going to dive into more in the future in live action. But the creator of that show is Dave Filoni, or he works on that show. He's like the director, and they look to him as like the Star Wars, like if they can't refer to George Lucas, he's basically like George Lucas reborn. So they brought him on to help make The Mandalorian. So the combination of him and Jon Favreau pulling together all these other directors like Taika Waititi really makes such a good show. There's actually, for Star Wars Day, May 4th, they released Rise of Skywalker. They released the last episode of Clone Wars, and they released this new show called Disney Gallery. And this season of Disney Gallery is 8 episodes focusing on the making of The Mandalorian. And the first episode is a roundtable of all the directors talking about how they got together to make The Mandalorian. And I didn't realize Bryce Dallas Howard directed an episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she did. Taika Waititi did, who directed Thor Ragnarok. Who Taika is a genius.
Big fan. Taika is awesome.
He's amazing. And one of the most amazing things to come out this week, the news-wise, is that Taika is going to be directing one of the next Star Wars movies. How amazing is that? So my
expectations are sky high.
They should be.
There's no way I'll not be disappointed by that movie.
The funniest and most entertaining episode of The Mandalorian was his episode, if that tells you anything. So yeah, Mandalorian's great. Definitely. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, not a 5 out of 5, because some of the episodes weren't that great. The show definitely doesn't have a whole lot happening narratively, but it has a lot of potential, and I want to see more.
It has Baby Yoda.
Great.
It does have Baby Yoda.
No, I mean, let's face it. With the bar that was set with this recent trilogy, their only place to go up, only place to go from here is up.
Indeed, yeah. There's a lot of good stuff, and I'm looking forward to it. I feel like we never talk about. We don't talk too much about the video game side of things, unfortunately. It just takes a lot of time investment to play through a video game. But I know you guys are into the Star Wars video games. I haven't gotten to it yet. Sauce, do you want to give us a little more detail about Fallen Order?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually didn't put this in the show notes, but so before I got to Fallen Order, I wanted to talk about Battlefront, because that's another really good Star Wars game that's been out for a while. So we talked about what's hot. Now we're going to, if you haven't checked it out yet, but now we're going to talk about some older stuff, still Star Wars Battlefront 2. It didn't start off great. A lot of controversy.
I stopped playing it.
So you did play it, but you stopped?
Like the first week or two.
Because of all the loot box drama?
Oh, because I wanted to hang out with you, big guy.
Hey. So Yeah, big mistake. Anyway, I came back to it since they've made like over the last 2 years, they've made a bunch of updates, added a bunch of more features, more characters to play as, newer characters, more game modes. And I know me and Hummer were playing it for a while. They made all these free updates that makes it pretty fun for a first-person shooter and a big like open field battle. If you want to scratch that Star Wars itch and just play as a stormtrooper and start lighting up some rebel scum, it's a lot of fun right now. Definitely worth checking out. What do you think, Hummer?
You can actually pick it up on PC for like $5.99. It's great. So actually, when I talk about the Battlefront series as a whole, I've been playing that since way back in the Xbox days, the original Battlefront and the original Battlefront 2. So when the first Battlefront on Xbox One came out, I was a day oneer. But I forget, I'm like into the 130 somethings or whatever on the levels for that game. I've put like months, years probably of time into that game, and it was amazing. I loved everything about it. Getting into Battlefront 2, I was very disappointed with the first release. I thought the way they did the mechanics was just like they had something good and they could have just improved upon it, and they instead I think rewrote a whole new game. And so the first like few months I played it, didn't get into it, but like Saw said, once they start coming out with some of these new updates, introducing new characters, every time they come out with a new like DLC for the storyline, I'd get into it because this one actually does have a decent story that you can play on the first person mode. And their game modes, the new game modes that they came out with, I thought were fantastic. I would definitely, if you're into Star Wars and you're into the Star Wars video games and you like that kind of that Battlefield, if you're a Battlefield 5 or Battlefield 1 and you just want to basically skinned over in Star Wars with some Star Wars weapons and characters, it's awesome. You can play as all the heroes. You can play as I think do they have Darth Maul now? I think you can play.
Yeah.
I think they introduced Darth Maul. And Tito just slaps his cane. He's like, I'm in. I'm coming back. But you've been to tell me you've had this game the whole time.
I've been sitting on it.
Gross.
I'm curious now, honestly.
It's fun. It really is fun. And it's a good way to get immersed into the universe, not necessarily from a story perspective, because it literally takes probably one session sitting down to beat the story mode on it. But yeah, I'm glad that I got reintroduced to it because I love the Battlefront series. I think they're out of all the Battlefields, I like the Star Wars versions the best.
So yeah, I think it's definitely worth your time if you're looking for something older to play that maybe you missed out on this one. I give it a 3 out of 5, which means, wait for it to go on sale, which it is right now. I think I picked it up for $20. So if you haven't or already played through everything else we suggested, check out Battlefront.
$5.99 on PC.
Yeah, for the Master Race.
We should probably take that out of our jokes. No, if it's really $5.99 on PC,
the PC Master Race is a subreddit where people post pictures of their computers and make fun of console players. We are minorities. I don't see that part necessarily on the subreddit.
I'm joking.
But we both on here, we play. Some of us here play only console, and some of us here, some of us new, some of us are no longer virgins to this, but we play PC and console.
That's a different one.
Yeah, hold on. Let me
that one was good. That one was good.
Yeah, so definitely a good shooter. But if you're looking for more of just a straight up story experience, another game you can check out another Star Wars game you can check out is Jedi Fallen Order. I was waiting for the boing. Jedi Fallen Order is made by Respawn, who also made Apex Legends, and they made Titanfall 1 and 2. So they've got an amazing track record for video games. They only come out with bangers. Fallen Order is you're a Jedi during, again, the good Star Wars time period. It's another reason why it's a good game. Right after the Jedi are being hunted down. So you're a young Jedi being hunted down, and you're only using your lightsaber and your force powers. It's a very linear game, so you're going through levels and exploring each new level. It's not like super open world. It's more linear than open world. The lightsaber combat is very fun, although personally I didn't think there was enough of it. That's why I didn't recommend it to you, Tito, because the battles are kind of few and far between. It's more so exploration, and then maybe you fight like 2 or 3 guys, and then you're exploring. Some of the boss battles are really cool, but the fighting in it is great. It's just it doesn't happen enough. But overall, the story is very good. Homer, what did you think? You played through it, right?
Yeah, I played through it, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. The story is fantastic. The lightsaber mechanics are some of the best I've ever seen. Like in terms of like it's fluid, not like just a hackathon. It's not like you're just button mashing. Like you're actually blocking lightsaber strokes. You're actually executing strategic lightsaber strokes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Stroking strategically here. And so it's definitely different than other games. Like even Battlefront, if you are playing Battlefront and you're playing as a Jedi or a Sith hero and you're going up against another Sith hero, it's just a hackathon. You're not blocking lightsaber shots. You're not actually getting into a duel. You're just basically going around and slashing things, where this is not like that in terms of the saber mechanics. I think it's also cool too. You mentioned that Respawn with Titanfall 1 and 2, 2 other games that I would recommend if you have some free time, check those out because they're awesome. Because they institute some of the mechanics of those games. The wall climbing, the wall jumping, the physics are very similar between the two. I think you hit it there too. There's not enough of the boss fights because most of the time you're basically just deflecting laser blasts from another stormtrooper for whatever they are in this particular age. But then you're also coming up against shock troopers, forget what they're called, but they have like lightsaber training. Some of them are pretty tough, but even then it's like not
it's
enough.
Like the dude in Force Awakens that goes, "A traitor!"
Oh yeah.
He's got one of them thingies.
So, but overall, very fun game. The story is awesome. I mean, if we're talking ratings here, I think it's a 3 because it's wait till it goes on sale.
Mm-hmm.
It's also one where I do wish, now that I do have a gaming PC, that I wish I would have actually gotten it for PC, because on the Xbox, I did notice there are times where the frame rates actually drop to an uncomfortable level where the game seems to like not be able to pick up with the graphical demands. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to wait till it to go on sale and actually replay through on PC.
Did you play it on an Xbox or Xbox One X?
Just an Xbox One S.
Oh yeah, that's your problem. You're a noob. That's what happened.
I'm cheap. So, but yeah, no, I do want to try it on the PC when it goes on super sale.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Solid 3 out of 5. The story though, if I was not rating it as a if you should play it right now or not, I would give the story a 5 out of 5.
Nice.
100.
All right. So, if you're still looking for something older that maybe you haven't seen before in the Star Wars universe, there is the original trilogy, episode 4, 5, and 6. The best 3 out of all of them, although maybe Revenge of the Sith is I think is really good. So like we wanted to, we've probably seen them. If you haven't seen them, just go watch them all. But we wanted to rank, or we wanted to talk about.
Those are 10s. Those are 10s. Those are immediately stop listening to us. Do not go to work tomorrow. Do not answer any phone calls, text messages, anything. Go and watch those 3 freaking movies and get with the times.
So we wanted to talk about what order you should watch them in, but I wanted to ask you guys, do you remember the first time that you saw the movies? Because I remember I was 9. I was 9 or 10. I went to Family Video this week, brought to you by Family Video. They're closed because of coronavirus.
You love Family Video.
I went and I saw it, and I know I heard about it from different TV shows and stuff, but I had no clue what it was, and I rented the first VHS. And I remember popping it in and just being completely like blown away. Like, what is happening? This is awesome. Darth Vader's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I immediately rode my bike down to the family video after I watched it so I could rent the next two and just burn through them. I still remember that. And that's the only thing I've ever done that for. I was so excited to watch them. Do you guys remember the first time you watched Star Wars?
Yeah. I think my dad had the VHSs whenever those first came out, and we were sitting there in the living room at my cousin's, and all of us probably same age, 8, 9, 10, however old we would have been, sat there, watched them all. And I actually think the first one I watched was not episode 4 though. I believe the first one I watched was Empire.
Oh.
So I am biased when it comes to the order which to watch them in, where I believe in that you start with Empire.
I don't think anybody in the world thinks you should watch Empire first.
I forget how it just happened. It may even been that it was on TV and I was just the one, and my dad's like, oh, you know, Star Wars, it's time. You need to start watching these. But yeah, no, I mean, I didn't mind it. I don't think I lost any of the, you know, pizzazz. I was still wowed that first time I got to that. What? No!
Spoilers. None yet. You didn't actually say anything. Yeah, it was more of I don't remember the exact first time that I saw it. But my dad was as scary of a man as he is. He's always been a Star Wars fan, so we just had them in my house growing up. The earliest memory I have is he wasn't like, all right, you're of age, time to watch the Star Wars trilogy. I think like we were just bored one day and he put a VCR in, and it was actually Return of the Jedi was the first one I saw. And it was when I was pretty young. It was like, I think like 6, 7, somewhere around there. So I like remember seeing Yoda in the Dagobah swamp and thinking that was, I was like, well, this is odd. But like we watched that when you're a kid, like that the Battle of Endor,
amazing.
With
half of it
is so, yeah, like it's so good. Not to keep punching the Rise of Skywalker, but like, man, the payoff in that the space battle at the Battle of Endor is so good. Like there's like you have emotional investment in the pilots as they're fighting, and like the way that they go down, like you feel every one of those losses. And then when they actually destroy the Death Star, spoilers, when they actually destroy the Death Star, like it's so good and cathartic. And
what?
Once again, like the Rise of Skywalker, like how did that movie end? It's so terrible.
I love like I would just, even like in my 20s, I would just go and just load up the Battle of Endor and just watch it over and over again because it's so good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Except for Ewoks.
Yeah, but as a kid though, like
the best.
A very young Tito was like, "Hey, Ewoks are cool, man. That's why I'm a furry now."
It's true.
So that I watched Empire first, but I watched all the first trilogy pretty early on, and had like a background like appreciation and enjoyment of Star Wars. I think it wasn't until the prequel trilogy, episodes 1 through 3, came out that I really got into it, because I saw how much like the people who grew up with that first trilogy got into the prequel trilogy. And like episode 1, previously the worst Star Wars movie, like actually higher on Rotten Tomatoes than The Rise of Skywalker as of this morning.
As it should be.
But episode 1 wasn't like, people didn't hate it when it first came out. It took a while I imagine people left the theater feeling uncomfortable and then years later were like, yeah, that was bad. But at least that trilogy got better as it went on. Yeah, the what was your first question? When did I first see it? I think I just grew up with it, and I kind of realized that I like Star Wars when you start to realize those things, and I was like 7, 8 years old, something like that.
You know, the Phantom Menace is when it could have been a thing beforehand, but this is when I actually started noticing like people going to the movie theater, packing the midnight showing, dressing up, having just a completely full theater for an episode or for a movie. That, to me, I feel like that was one of the first movies to really do that, and that awoke that love of going to the movies for me. Like, I love going to the very first showing, being in a packed theater, cheering with everybody, clapping
Seeing
with
people's
everybody.
reactions. Yeah.
Yeah, and experiencing it together. And that's why going to the movies is just one of my favorite things to do in the world. But like with a bunch of other nerds who are enjoying like a Marvel movie night or just something we're all gonna like, coming out. That
People who
the
are
Star Wars awoke that in me.
Yeah.
You-
People who are
have you
sincerely
ever-
excited to be there in the theater. Sorry,
Have
go
you ever
ahead, Hummer.
dressed up?
I've always will wear like a t-shirt or a hoodie or something, but I've never like fully dressed up.
I have.
You dressed up? What'd you dress up for?
I dressed up for Force Awakens.
Oh my
Oh,
god!
nice.
What'd you wear?
I wore a Kylo Ren outfit and went to Hooters beforehand, fully dressed in it, and ate chicken wings.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
It was awesome. And then my wife's friend who was with us, my wife did. So it was me and we have 6 of us. 2 of us were dressed up. The other 4 were not. So she was dressed as Princess Leia and I was dressed as Kylo Ren. And we were sitting in Hooters.
That's awesome. That's so cool. That's inspiring the fanfic I'm gonna write later.
All right. So my question for you guys are: have your kids started watching Star Wars?
No, I try to. They know what it is. Like they recognize like Darth Vader, but like mine are 3 and 4. So like anything live action loses their interest pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, my kids are too young to register memories. But I think we've watched. I don't think we've watched all 9 around them, but we've watched the 7, 8, and the new trilogy and some of the other stuff.
So oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I thought that that like Clone Wars. So I think we mentioned this last week. I've been watching like Ozarks and stuff like that. And I'm afraid it's giving them like horrible, scarring memories. And so we've recently, the last week, been watching a lot of like Clone Wars episode, the cartoon. There's actually some pretty violent, like grown-up themes in Clone Wars. There's one where they're on Mandalore. And like someone gets stabbed with a lightsaber through the stomach. Someone gets beheaded with the dark saber. And then another person like dies violently. And I was like, you'll be fine.
Well, the reason why I'm asking, because I was wondering, since you guys have this wonderful opportunity ahead of you, that when your kids do start getting into that live action, and I'm assuming you're going to sit them down and say it's time to really watch Star Wars. Are you going to have them watch it like chronologically? Are you going to have them watch it like, not just chronologically, but the whole universe chronologically? Or are you going to do it just by movies only? Are you going to do the Godfather order? What are you guys going to do when you introduce your kids to Star Wars, the full universe, or just the movies?
There was so my wife, the first year that we started dating, she had not seen the Star Wars movies. So
And you kept dating her?
Yeah, she's there's no non-dirty joke that I can say on here. She's lovely, the mother of my children.
That good, huh?
She so she'd never seen the Star Wars movies. And so I was like, okay. I'd heard that like, so at that time, we started dating before the new trilogy came out. So there were only 6 Star Wars movies. And I'd heard that like, if you watch, so the biggest reveal, spoilers, the biggest reveal in like the Star Wars universe is that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. So you find that out in episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. And apparently, like, live in theaters, this was like a huge, like, shocking moment, like crazy stuff. Like, Darth Vader is a Skywalker. He's Luke's dad. Like, there's this big connection. There's this destiny for Luke. He has to reject his past, blah, blah, blah. I heard about people who came to Star Wars after the prequel trilogy was out, and the prequel trilogy spoils it. Like, the prequel trilogy is about Anakin becoming Darth Vader. So then you go to episode 4. At the end of the prequel trilogy, they're like, oh, they have 2 kids. They're named Luke and Leia. These are. So also, you know that Leia is Luke's sister, and they're both Darth Vader's kids. So then you go into episode 4, and you're like, all right, here's Luke grown up, not knowing about Darth Vader, and then he finds out what the audience already knows if you watch it in chronological order. So, like, my wife is culturally savvy enough to like know that Luke is Darth Vader's son, like Luke's his father. But the way we watched it was at the time we skipped episode 1 because it's honestly difficult to watch, minus the last 15 to 20 minutes. That Duel of Fates lightsaber battle is the shit. So we skip episode 1. You start with A New Hope. You watch it, Luke, blah, blah, blah. Then you watch episodes 2 and 3, Clone Wars and Return of the Sith, as like a flashback for like the fall of the... Oh, I'm sorry. You watch A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. So you find out, like, you watch A New Hope, you see Darth Vader, you find out that Darth Vader is Luke's father. Then, before Return of the Jedi, you watch episodes 2 and 3, Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith. Because you really, like... Phantom Menace doesn't really add too much narratively. Like, you get most of that background at the beginning of Clone Wars, that like that Anakin came from nothing. He came into the Jedi Order late, and he's in love with Queen Amidala, blah blah blah.
But
And
you
then,
also get the Emperor setting up everything as well.
yeah, like you get all of that from the last 2, from episodes 2 and 3.
No, but you get it from 1. I mean, you can. That's when he makes his first play. I mean, he started the war, and I'm disagreeing with you. I'm saying,
Oh, what the...
like the way I look at it, I'm a purist. All right, I believe the correct order is 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
and then just don't watch 7, 8, 9.
Oh.
But I mean,
That's
if you're
real
gonna
pure.
watch them, then that would be the time. But I look at the original trilogy as not the story of Anakin, but the story of the Emperor manipulating the galaxy into becoming the Emperor.
Man, the Emperor won. If you look back at all 9, especially after the Rise of Skywalker, like, the Emperor won so hard. What I thought it was supposed to be was like first trilogy 4 through 6. You know, the Luke Skywalker takes down the Empire. First, the prequel trilogy 1 through 3. The corruption and fall of Anakin Skywalker and the return of Darth Vader. So then what the most recent trilogy should be is like the return of good and the rise of the Republic, but instead it's like incomprehensible bullshit. So after you look at all 9 episodes, it's like, wow, the Emperor like destroyed this like democratic governing body in the universe, and the Jedi never recovered. Like,
Best villain of all time. What do you think, Hummer? What order?
I'm a big proponent of the Godfather order, as Tito is referring to. I do agree with you, though, Sauce, that you do need to include the Phantom Menace because it shows the brilliance that is, like you just mentioned, the greatest supervillain of all time, who literally orchestrated a change in power and regime that altered the universe forever, at the time that from the minute he first becomes shown on screen. The only thing I would add, The Godfather, is I would add Rogue One to it.
Can you quickly say why you call it the Godfather order?
Because you are going through a story and then you're doing a flashback. So you're starting in present day, and then in the Godfather trilogy, you start in present day, and the actual movies do a flashback before you get to the ending of the actual trilogy. So that's what we're doing with Star Wars: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. If you want, throw in Rogue One because it doesn't give you any spoilers by throwing it in there before A New Hope. But you could do those and almost create your own trilogy out of those 3. Start a new trilogy with the Phantom Menace, tie it all together with Jedi, and you have a fantastic way to watch Star Wars. In that way, your new audience gets that thrill of discovering the biggest secret in the movies, which was Darth Vader, Luke. I want to amend that. I would say 4. I would watch it 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, then Rogue One, and then you watch 4 again, and then 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3.
and so on and so on. But you guys, we got to wrap up this episode here.
Never-ending story.
You guys have any other Star Wars related information that you want to share with our 2 listeners?
Old Anakin is a whiny little bitch.
Yeah. The payoff episode 9 is real tough, but if you stick through the whole thing, am I sad that I watched Star Wars? No, of course not. Star Wars is amazing. I love it. I'm really excited to see what's coming next. Episode 9 super disappointing, but there's plenty of room to recover.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, speaking of super disappointing, we were going to get to chapter 3 of movies and other things this week, and talk about that, The Rock as other movie characters. But looks like we ran out of time this week. So if you guys want to check us out on Instagram, we're at TimeSyncPod. On Twitter, we're at TimeSyncPod. On Facebook, we're at TimeSyncPod. We're available on Apple and Google. Check us out. Leave comments, subscribe, whatever people say. Just leave us a comment and let us know what you want us to check out. We'd be happy to hear from you. And happy Star Wars week. May the 4th be with you.